What's up everyone, it's Victon back with another Path of Exile build guide. Today we're going to be going over the Immortal Pathfinder Scourge era character that I've been playing and having a ton of success with. I actually think this is going to be the character that I try and take to level 100 this league. It's that strong. But as always, before we get into it, if you end up enjoying this guide or any of my other PoE guides, do consider liking the video and subscribing. I already have a few other build guides up for Harvest League and many more to come before the league's over. Also, the way I do my guides here is I like to just kind of start off by showing some gameplay footage of the build in action in the end game, just so you guys can get an idea of what it actually looks like and if it's something that you might enjoy playing. So let's go ahead and get that rolling. I also like making shorter, straightforward guides. I feel like some of those 30-minute build guides, while they are awesome and very informative, can get a bit overwhelming for newer players, and experienced players just kind of want to see what it looks like in action and grab the POB Pastebin link and roll with it. Even though it'll be a little bit shorter, I'll definitely make sure you guys get everything you need to know to be successful in running this build if you do end up choosing it for yourself. Now, seriously, this character cannot die unless you actually fall asleep at your keyboard. It's got so many layers of defense, and typically when you have this much defense, you actually lose out on a lot of damage, but not this build. Scourge Arrow Poison actually makes for one of the fastest clear speeds I've done this league so far, even on par with Fireblade Vortex clear speeds and Cast on Crit Ice Nova. It won't absolutely melt Cyrus or Uber Elder, but with how much defense it has, you can comfortably clear those fights deathless pretty easily. And the best part about this build is the budget version is super cheap at about 4x, which is really just your weapon, and that's a 6-link weapon, so even cheaper if you don't need the 6-link. And that'll get you about 1 to 2 million Shaper DPS, and honestly the high-end budget version isn't even that expensive either, coming in at just about 20 to 30x depending on how much you want to craft the gear yourself, and that'll end up being about 8 to 10 million Shaper DPS. Now, the very high-end version of the build can be about anywhere between 30 to 40x, I would say, and adds about 1 to 2 million DPS. Yeah, as you can see, the playstyle is super fast, zooming through T16 maps like it's nothing. The clear speed is actually roughly the same with the budget version too, so that's really nice being able to speed farm maps for seeds or to spawn Cyrus, whatever you want to do. But doing that will net you some really fast, great currency to kind of further upgrade your gear. Once you get to the in-game budget spot, you'll be able to start killing those in-game bosses a lot quicker and smoother as well. You can do them all on the low budget, but single target is a little bit less on those fights, so it's going to take a little bit longer, but still of course is deathless, so no problem actually completing the boss fight. Alright, so let's jump into the passive skill tree first. Now, we'll be using the desktop app Path of Building. If you don't already have it downloaded, a link will be in the description and I'd highly recommend getting it. Pretty much every Path of Exile build guide uses this these days, so go ahead and download that. What you're going to want to do is go up here to Import Export Build, then click Import from Pastebin, and then go back to this video, and in the description you're going to find a POB Pastebin link and copy it, and then paste it back into this box and click Import, and you'll be good to go. Now, the way I lay out my POBs is I actually have a leveling guide for your skill point selections kind of built in. Just click down here and you're going to be able to see from your first lab all the way up to your final build, and see where you spin your points kind of from start to finish. And in the spirit of shorter build guides, I actually don't dive too deep into the tree, so I won't go over every single node or anything like that, but I will mention the main focuses and big keystones that you're going to be wanting to take. For the most part, you're going to be grabbing tons of life nodes, lots of poison nodes, and some bow nodes. Once we get to the in-game version of the build, we actually throw in a timeless jewel that gives us the Divine Flesh Notable, which makes 50% of elemental damage taken as chaos damage, and also gives you plus 10 to maximum chaos resistance. If you're ever able to cap your chaos resistance, this is a ton of survivability. That mixed with dodge and spell dodge, Wind Dancer, and a few select gear items we're going to talk about later, you're going to be incredibly tanky. You can search for the Timeless Jewel by typing in Sacrificed in the Name of Zibabqua, and it'll show you all the jewels that have that specific notable, the Divine Flesh. You also want to sock it here or here for the best results. We also will be socking in some cluster jewels, and for your large cluster jewel, the best nodes are Fuel the Fight, Martial Prowess, and Tempered Arrowheads. And the best medium jewels you want to get are the following 4 notables just between the 2 jewels: you're going to get Wasting Affliction, Circling Oblivion, Low Tolerance, and Eternal Suffering. For the high budget version, we actually do socket a Watcher's Eye with a damage over time multiplier while affected by Malevolence. These go for about 8 to 10x right now. I actually bought mine for 5x a week or so ago, so I guess they're going up right now for some reason. This could be your last upgrade though of the build just because it is so expensive, so no worries if you don't have it just yet. For your regular jewels, you can just go ahead and go with something like this, which is actually quite easy to harvest craft. And speaking of harvest craftings, I'm going to be making a video alongside this guide that goes over how to craft each item in this build in the cheapest possible way with harvest crafting. Now for ascendancies, you're going to be wanting to go with, and in this order, Nature's Reprisal, Master Toxicist, Nature's Boon, and lastly, Master Alchemist. This is going to give you a ton of great poison damage, and it'll really beef up your flasks while also giving you some great defense while using the flasks. Lastly, for your amulet, you are going to want to allocate Dirty Techniques for some great additional damage. Alright, with the skill tree out of the way, let's go ahead and go over the gem setups. First, of course, is Scourge Arrow itself. Your 4-link will be Scourge Arrow, Mirage Archer, Deadly Ailments, and Unbound Ailments. For your 5th link, you're going to want to add in Infused Channeling, and for your 6th link, you're going to add in Added Chaos. Now, you're also going to be wanting to run a debuffing Wither Totem for bosses, so you're going to use Wither, Spell Totem, multiple totems, and faster casting. And for your buffs, you're going to be running a Plague Bearer, Malevolence, Herald of Agony, and at least a level 3 Enlighten. I also have a Cast When Damage Taken setup with Cast When Damage Taken, Immortal Call, Increased Duration, and Stone Golem, all at level 20. Now, for what goes in your weapon, you can actually do a couple different things here. If you have a 6th link, what I did was I went with Dash, Second Wind, Phase Run, Increased Duration, Enhance, and Portal. This is a setup that's going to give you permanent dash uptime, and your Phase Run gives you insane move speed that is also permanently up on you. And I put that on my left click, so it actually automatically gets cast 24/7. It makes for a really nice speed farming kind of flow. You can actually even get away with a 5-link here only and just put Portal on your 6th socket. All that Enhance does for your Portal, it gives it cast speed, so not too big of a deal. And that's actually going to save you an extra 1 to 2 exalts or so definitely an option. And that is really it for the gym setup, so let's go ahead and hop into the gear section. Alright, so for all the gear here, I did personally craft a few items which saved me a ton, and like I said, I'll do a separate video on how to craft all of those items. So check the description in the video if you want to see that video and save some extra currency by crafting them yourself. Luckily, the uniques in this build are actually super cheap. First and foremost is your weapon, which we're going to be going with a Dark Scorn, which you can pick a good rolled one up for only about 30 chaos. And like I said, it technically doesn't even have to be Sick Link, so super cheap, and this is going to give you a ton of extra poison damage, as well as it's going to fit perfectly with your build by converting 25% of physical damage taken into chaos damage taken. That mixed with our Timeless Jewel, you have tons of max chaos resistances, so it's actually going to give you a ton of defenses. For your gloves, you're going to be wanting to get one of the Hands of High Templar with Cursed Enemies with Despair on hit. Just getting that implicit alone is actually super cheap, it's only about 50 chaos. If you want some additional implicits like additional Frenzy Charge or maximum % life, that's where the price goes up a bit. But the only mandatory implicit here is that Despair on hit, and even with a Frenzy Charge and life, it still only goes for about 1 to 2 exalts, so not too bad. We also grabbed 2 Circle of Nostalgias with chaos damage while affected by Herald of Agony, and Herald of Agony buff effect. Some nice implicits to look out for here would be maximum life, resistances, or damage with poisons. Any of those, you don't have to, at least get the base item, but if you do go with those, you can spend maybe 2 to 3 exalts to get all of those implicits. Pretty not bad, and if you just get the base item, it's only going to be about 100 chaos to 1x tops. Again, not too bad. For the belt, I do have a Headhunter, but it's completely unnecessary, and it's actually quite a bit of overkill. So I had one, why not? But if you guys don't have it, don't worry at all. You can actually just use a Torrent of Reclamation. Those are only about 6x, and it gives you a ton of extra damage, and actually a whole bunch of extra movement speed as well, so it's probably just better than the Headhunter in general. Or you could even just go for a cheap Stygian Vise with life, resistances, and chaos damage. Any of those options are just fine. Alright, now for the helmet. You ideally want the enchant Scourge Arrow creates an additional spore pod at maximum stages. You also want life, resists, and nearby enemies have -9 chaos resist, as well as a 10% of physical damage taken as lightning damage. Again, we're trying to negate as much physical damage as possible and letting elemental resistances do the work, because then it gets converted to make us take chaos damage. And we have way more chaos resistance than elemental resistance, so it makes physical damage barely hurt us. This is a pretty expensive helmet, so I would definitely suggest trying to self-craft this. You're going to save a ton of currency. Buying the base and crafting one with just life and resistances is very cheap. It's only going to cost you about 30 chaos, but going for that -9 chaos resist to nearby enemies and the 10% of physical as lightning is actually going to jump it up anywhere between 10 and 15 exalts, so quite a bit more. And it's really only worth doing if you plan on doing Cyrus or Uber Elder farming with this build. I didn't have it for a long time and it was actually just totally fine. For the amulet, we want one with some intelligence on the base, and you're going to go for life, chaos resists, +1 to level of chaos skill gems, +1 to level of dexterity skill gems, and chaos damage over time multiplier. For the bench crafting affix, you can either go with chaos damage or just a resist to kind of help fill out. And lastly, for the quiver, you're going to want to go with one that has chaos damage over time multiplier, aspect of the spider, life, and then for the rest of the affixes, you can kind of do a few different things here. You could either get +1 to maximum chaos resistance, bow attacks fire an additional arrow, attack speed, or a regular damage over time multiplier. All great options. Now for your chest piece, we're going to be wanting to go with one that has -15 to total mana cost of attacks. This is going to help you spam and charge up your Scourge Arrow, and it makes it basically free, which is pretty big. You also want 15% of physical damage taken as cold, lightning, or fire. Any of them are fine. And 10% chance to gain a frenzy charge on hit. That's what's going to be our frenzy charge generator. I also got life and chaos resistances, as well as crafted on life % on mine. For your boots, you ideally want ones with life, resistances, move speed, elusive, and tailwind. And this is definitely expensive, so you can certainly just start off by not having tailwind or elusive, and you'll be totally fine, and over time just kind of gear up and get those 2 additional affixes. Now for your flasks, you do want a move speed flask with additional move speed on it. You also want an enduring mana flask of staunching for bleed removal and mana regen. This is going to help out a ton with being able to spam dash, otherwise you're going to go out of mana too often and it just really doesn't feel good when you just want to zoom around. I grabbed a Blood of the Karui Life Flask, which gets buffed by being a Pathfinder in general, and it's going to make your Life Flask recover super fast. It's really nice quality of life. You also want a Cinder Swallow, and I grabbed one with additional move speed on it. And lastly, you want a Carlitos Diamond Flask for a bunch of additional poison damage. And I think that about covers it for your gear. Remember, if you are interested in crafting these items yourself to save some currency, do check out my guide on how to do all that. I'll leave a link in the description. And that's really it, guys. That's the basics of a Pathfinder Scourge Arrow build focused on max DPS and survivability. I have had a ton of fun playing this build, and I do think that it'll be the build I try and push to level 100 just because of how strong it is, being very tanky and being able to dish out a lot of damage and being super fast. It's crazy tanky. You'll only die when you really mess up yourself, and you can't blame the game. And it's got a super fast clear speed. Like I said, it's on par with the Fireblade Vortex, with the Cast on Crit Ice Nova. It's right up there with those guys. And on top of that, it's just not that expensive to get to going, and then to min-max, it's not that expensive as well. It's about half the cost of those other 2 builds that I was talking about, so not too bad at all. If you made it this far in the video, I do appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoy the build if you do choose to play it. Also, if you like this guide and want to see more or any of my other guides, do consider subscribing and liking the video. This is a newer channel, so it really does help a lot, and I greatly appreciate it. Thanks everyone, and I will see you all in the next one.